Born in Paris in 1909, Simone Weil was a French philosopher, a Christian mystic, and a social activist. The family was Jewish, but her parents were agnostics, so no religion at all was practiced in their home. Her only sibling was her brother André, who would go on to become one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century. Throughout her life, Simone suffered from severe headaches, sinus infections, and poor physical coordination. She was brilliant, lived a very ascetic lifestyle, and was both introverted and eccentric, all of which limited her ability to socialize with others. Nonetheless, she became a talented teacher and participated in the great political movements of her time. Weil was a precocious student who became proficient in ancient Greek by the age of 12. She later learned Sanskrit in order to read the Bhagavad Gita in its original language. In her teens, she studied with the great philosopher Émile Chartier and eventually earned a doctorate in philosophy. For most of her short life, she taught philosophy at Le Puy, a secondary school for girls. Weil wrote extensively about political movements and later about spiritual mysticism, with both breadth and insight. One biographer claims that Weil was, quote, a moral genius in the area of ethics, a genius of immense revolutionary range, unquote. Weil had great empathy with working-class people. At age 6, during the First World War, she refused to use sugar because the troops entrenched along the Western Front had none. When she was 10, she declared herself a Bolshevik. In her late teens, she became involved in the workers' movement. She wrote political articles, marched in demonstrations, and advocated workers' rights. At this time, she declared herself a Marxist, a pacifist, and a trade unionist. While teaching at Le Puy, she became involved in local politics, and despite criticism, actively supported unemployed striking workers. She also wrote books and articles about social and economic issues, sometimes criticizing popular Marxist thought, and had a pessimistic view of both capitalism and socialism. Later, she would identify herself as an anarchist, and despite her pacifism, she fought for a brief period of time in the Spanish Civil War on the Republican side. Simone Weil was raised in complete agnosticism. As a teenager, she considered the existence of God for herself and decided nothing could be known either way. In her spiritual autobiography, however, Weil records that she always had a Christian outlook, taking to heart the idea of loving one's neighbor. Several profound experiences made Christian faith very attractive to Weil. Once, while in Portugal, she describes how she was deeply moved to the point of tears by the beauty of villagers singing hymns during an outdoor religious ceremony. Then, while visiting Italy, she had an experience of religious ecstasy in the Basilica of St. Mary of the Angels in the town of Assisi, the same church in which St. Francis of Assisi had worshipped. She says that on that day, for the first time in her life, she prayed. She had a third, more powerful revelation a year later when reciting George Herbert's poem Love, after which she wrote, quote, Christ himself came down and took possession of me, unquote. From that time forward, her writings, while retaining their focus on social and political issues, became more mystical and spiritual. Weil was strongly attracted to Roman Catholicism, but declined to be baptized because she thought the church was in great need of reform. She did receive spiritual direction, however, from a Dominican priest, and around this time she met Gustave Thibon, a French Catholic author who later edited some of her work. In 1942, Weil traveled to New York City and lived among the poor in Harlem. She usually attended daily Mass at Corpus Christi Church, the same church where Columbia student and future Trappist monk Thomas Merton would be baptized. Next, she traveled to London, where she joined the French Resistance. While there, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis and was instructed to rest and to eat well, but she refused special treatment. On the contrary, in solidarity with the starving residents of France living under Nazi rule, she limited her food intake. Her condition quickly deteriorated, and she was moved to a sanatorium. After a lifetime of illness and frailty, Simone Weil died in August 1943 of cardiac failure. She was 34 years old. A priest who knew her well reported that she was baptized shortly before her death. Biographer Richard Rees writes that it was both her compassion for the suffering of her countrymen in France and her love for and close imitation of Christ that led to her death. According to Rees, quote, "Whatever explanation one may give of her death will amount in the end to saying that she died of love," unquote. Simone Weil's writings continue to fascinate and to inspire.